Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Mary Trump Live. It is great to have you with me. I'm going to dive right in. The focus today will be on a couple of stories that I think need to get more attention. We learned from a press release from Donald's campaign that he knows nothing about and has absolutely nothing to do with something called Project 2025. Okay. Interesting that he claims not to have even heard of it, considering he talks about it a lot, and has even said, despite not knowing anything about it, he hates it. That's a fascinating thing to pull off. So I want to read you something that was in the LA Times about how this has been unfolding over the course of the last day or so. Paul Dans, the director at the Heritage Foundation of Project 2025, which, if you'll remember, is a fascist manifesto for the second Trump presidency, or I guess any Republican presidency, is stepping down. The departure Tuesday was immediately welcomed by Donald's campaign, which has been trying for months to distance the candidate from the plan. His campaign advisors, Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, not campaign managers, sorry, two senior campaign advisors, had this to say. Reports of Project 2025's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with Donald and his campaign. It will not end well for you. Chris and Susie, that sounds like a threat. And why are you so giddy about this after all? The LA Times article continues. Paul, this is a quote from Heritage President Kevin D. Roberts, who, if you'll recall, recently suggested that we're in the middle of a new American revolution that will not be violent unless the left decides it's going to be, or something like that. I'm mangling the quote, but it was another threat. Anyway, Roberts had this to say. Paul Dans, who built the project from scratch and bravely led this endeavor over the past 2 years, will be departing the team and moving up to the front where the fight remains. Roberts said Project 2025 was built for any future administration to use, not specifically for Donald, and it was not shutting down. I want to give you a recap of what Project 2025 purports to want to do, right? The plans in this is very well laid out plans in this manifesto, which again is very fascistic. The nerds and I have talked about it before. A lot of other people have been running with it. It's incredibly important. We know what's in it. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want you to keep in mind what we're hearing from Donald's campaign about how he knows nothing about it, how he just totally distances himself from it, and it is nothing to do with him. This is a clip from Ken Cuccinelli, who was, I believe, the Deputy Director of Homeland Security, coincidentally, during Donald's last administration. Probably not a coincidence. He's a contributor to Project 2025. And this is what he had to say about, and this was only maybe 2 weeks ago, about Donald in relation to Project 2025. Oh, hang on. Sorry. There we go. That's weird. Let's try this again, shall we?
It's not mine.
I don't think it means anything at this point. I mean, he is running a campaign. This is something that, or the policies are things that are available for his policy team to look at. They know it exists. They're not spending time right now, analyzing it to see whether they fall in line with the president's positions he's taking in the campaign. I'll give you an example.
Okay, I'm not sure if you heard the beginning of that, but Chris Cuomo asked Ken Cuccinelli, who knows Donald very well, if it is indeed true that Donald has nothing to do with it. And Cuccinelli's response was, no, of course not. He's in campaign mode. He's going to say whatever he has to say, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. That's basically what he said. So now let's look at what's in Project 2025. It's a 900-page document, so this is just skimming the surface. And let's think about whether or not this is a plan that would be of interest to somebody like Donald Trump. Project 2025 calls for more power to be consolidated with the president, for more federal employees to be appointees of the president, that is, not civil servants, but partisans who have to take loyalty oaths not to the Constitution or the United States of America, but to the president, the person, and for less federal intervention in a range of areas. They want to eliminate the Department of Education, for example. It also calls for new rules that would empower mass deportations, for the wall along the southern border to be completed. It also calls for the demolition of key environmental agencies such as NOAA and the National Weather Service. That might sound a little niche, but perhaps you'll recall that during his administration, Donald got into a bit of a fight with NOAA and the National Weather Service because they accurately predicted the path of a hurricane. And he got it wrong to the extent that he actually changed a weather map with a Sharpie. 2025 also calls for tighter restrictions on abortion and for the federal government to collect data on the women who receive such procedures. It also supports a slew of ideas that are strongly anti-LGBTQ+. It's working to build a database of conservative personnel, again, loyalists. La Savita and Wiles again stressing that this has no connection. There's no connection at all between Donald and Project 2025. Well, Dance, the guy who wrote this thing or headed this project, also served in Donald's administration. He was the chief of staff at the official of Office of Personnel Management. And let's see who else other than him and Ken Cuccinelli. Oh, yeah, speechwriter and baby Nazi, Stephen Miller, also participated in Project 2025, as did the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, plus, again, Ken Cuccinelli. I don't think this is a coincidence. So when Donald's campaign says this, that it's been very clear for over a year that Project 2025 had nothing to do with the campaign, did not speak for the campaign, and should not be associated with the campaign or Donald in any way, I think we need to take that with several grains of salt, don't you? I mean, look, it's long past time that we take Donald or his team at their word, right? Luckily, there have been some people in the mainstream media who don't exactly swallow the line they're being sold. Jonathan Swan wrote the following: Project 2025 has become inconvenient for the Trump campaign, but it's produced nearly all the policy it was ever going to and owns the central personnel database in the conservative movement. Donald doesn't yet have a functioning transition team and will likely need its resources. Let's be more clear than that, shall we? Project 2025 lays out exactly what Donald would want a second term to look like for him. Executive power, mass deportations, LGBTQ plus hatred, total control over women. We need to stop letting them get away with lying about all of their policy positions, about all of their connections, about all of their ideology. Just like we need to stop believing him when he says he's going to debate Kamala Harris. And by the way, Donald, it's Kamala. And first of all, that's how you pronounce her first name. And secondly, it's Vice President Harris to you. Okay. So we're also being, getting this very wishy-washy response about whether or not he's going to debate Vice President Harris. This is what he had to say to Laura Ingraham about that.
Debater.
We'll wait. But because they already know everything. She wants to defund our police. She wants no bail. She wants no cash. You kill somebody and we're going to release you immediately. They call it cashless. By the way, this has been a horrible thing for our country. This has been what I just said. But we know where she is. She wants high taxes.
Well, they're going to say you're afraid of debating her. That's what they're going to say.
Well, they said that with Biden, too. I was afraid. I did great with Biden, and I did great in every debate. I've had a lot of debates.
But you're winning on all the issues,
But,
right?
I'm leading in the polls by, I think, a lot. I don't know. I hear different numbers. But I'm leading in all of the polls. I'm leading big in all of the swing states.
Okay, well, as for the leading part, that is not true. And it's way too early to tell. Vice President Harris has been a candidate for 30 seconds. We have no idea what the polls are going to show when she's actually the candidate, like officially the candidate. We haven't even had our convention yet. What we do know is that she seems to be closing the gap. She's certainly closed the enthusiasm gap and the fundraising gap. But, of course, he deflects and he lies about her record. But I did find it interesting that he said that we know everything already. And then he went on to talk about criminals. Yeah, we know a lot about your criminality and that you're not facing any consequences. But this was a response from an advisor in the Harris campaign. It's clear from tonight's question dodging. He's scared he'll have to defend his running mate's weird attacks on women or his own calls to end elections in America in a debate against the vice president. Yeah, I think it's fair to characterize it as he's scared. And I mean, I don't remember how the debate with President Biden was framed, because that actually does feel like it was 7 billion years ago. But, and I'm going to say that the last debate was an outlier, because everybody performed badly, just in very specific ways that, unfortunately for President Biden, all kind of came down on his head. But President Biden won all of the debates in 2020. Hillary Clinton won all of the debates in 2016. And I know I'm not an objective observer, but I think that's a fair assessment of what happened. And if President Biden won the debate, if President Biden lost the debate a month ago, Donald certainly didn't win it. But this is a whole new ballgame here. He has absolutely no idea what to expect. And it seems pretty obvious that his campaign is still completely wrong-footed by the change in Democratic candidates. And I don't think that they're going to be able to find a way to shift gears, because, again, their entire campaign was built around attacking President Biden for being old. Now, the sad thing is, it was working because the media totally fed into it, even though President Biden is 3 years older, had an incredibly successful first term, deserved a second one, and Donald is a threat to everything America cares about. So someday we're going to have to figure that one out, right? And I think it's sort of a sign of the dysfunction in American politics that President Biden's vice president is now the candidate and the polls are shifting. Don't get me wrong. Vice President Harris is amazing. I'm ecstatic that she's running. I'm so proud to support her. I am thrilled at how the rollout has gone. It literally could not have gone better. She brings an energy. She's 2 decades younger than Donald, who's now the oldest candidate in American history. All of that's great. The fundraising, the enthusiasm, all of it. However, she's part of the same administration that has been so successful. And that should benefit her, absolutely. But the fact that an individual matters more than the record of the party leading is a little disturbing. This time around, however, I'm all in and I'm cool with it because, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I feel guilty saying this, but now that it's a done deal, I'm quite relieved. And I hope President Biden is too. He deserves to rest on his extraordinary laurels. And don't get me wrong, he's not slowing down. He is still leading this country. He's still a brilliant president. He still has work to do. We're seeing this with his calls for Supreme Court reform. But it's a really good thing he passed the torch and that he did it when he did it. Now, whether that was purely a necessity or whether it was strategic, here we are. And the Trump campaign has not been able to figure out a way to deal with a new candidate who doesn't have any of the liabilities the other candidate had. And I have to be honest with you, that kind of fills me with joy. Plus, of course, the Trump campaign is strapped with what is, I think, shaping up to be the worst pick for vice president in American politics. I don't want to go on too long about this because the nerds and I did speak at length about this morning or this afternoon. But the idea of weirdness, of using weirdness as an attack, I again come down on the side of, yes, let's do that, but it has to be done in a very specific way because, you could be weird and charming and cool and creative and artistic and all that other great stuff. But we're talking about weirdness as creepiness, as weird, as bizarre, off-putting, makes your skin crawl, right? That kind of, what is wrong with these people that they want to be in your bedroom, that they want to know when these particular biological or functions are happening, that who want control over whether or not you can cross a state line. I mean, these are deeply dysfunctional people who have no business making any decisions, probably about their own lives, but certainly not about other people's. So there's an ad that came out. I'm not sure when. I just saw it today, but some of my friends were passing this around and were quite horrified by it. And I'm sorry to subject you to it, but this ad gets at what we mean when we mean weird. And the reason this ad is so effective, even though it may keep you up all night, is because it connects the weirdness with the authoritarian tendencies, with the misogyny, with all of the bigger things that are sometimes difficult to make resonate with people. So here's the ad. I'll talk a little bit about it on the other side.
Us MAGA Republicans banned abortion, but that's just the start.
That's just the start.
If Trump gets elected, we want the government involved in all aspects of your sex life.
Way more involved.
Way more involved.
When you have sexual intercourse, it should be illegal to use contraception. No pills, no condoms.
Your genitals are reserved for procreation.
If you freeze 12 eggs, you should be required to have 12 babies, or else you're a serial killer. And I'm definitely not a serial killer.
Are you?
My son monitors my porn usage to make sure I'm not self-pleasuring.
Just like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. That's true, you can look it up.
Don't you think that's normal?
Yeah, I do.
It's normal for your son to do that.
You should have a family member monitor your porn use too.
Because pleasuring yourself is very, very naughty.
I'm voting in November.
I'm voting in November. We're all voting in November. Are you?
Because what happens in your bedroom is up to me.
Is up to me and my son. Also, mouth stuff is a sin.
Okay, that last part I could have lived without. But that's an ad. That's sort of what we're looking at here. Just as a reminder, and again, I'm sorry to subject you to this, but J.D. Vance and people who support him believe in menstrual surveillance. That's tracking women's periods so they can see if a woman might be pregnant in the event that she wants to leave a state that has no right to choose. Okay? That is dystopian, but that's where we're headed. And Pete Buttigieg was in an interview on Fox, and he was asked about, they were talking about abortion rights, and the interviewer basically said, because obviously Pete Buttigieg was condemning the extremity of Donald's policies and the policies on the right, and the interviewer said, well, but he said, leave it up to the states. He said no nationwide ban, he'll leave it up to the states. And that is not what is going to happen. If Donald Trump were to get back into the White House, do you know how many favors he would have to return? First of all, he doesn't care about policy or ideology. He would do whatever his base required of him in order for him to stay in power and to stay out of prison. There will be a national abortion ban if Republicans are in charge. That means that 6-week ban that just went into effect in Idaho would be in effect in New York and Massachusetts and California and on and on and on. So we need to take them at their word. We need to take them seriously. And let's please, corporate media, let's please stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, because they don't deserve it, and they certainly haven't earned it. To kind of help wash that ad out of your head, again, I apologize, but I think it's important that we connect the dots and make it clear how we need to deploy these weapons in our arsenal, because again, one of the criticisms about saying weird is that it's flippant, that it's unserious, that it's sort of, it's too light. No, we're not talking about, weird, goofy. We're talking about weird, terrifying. All right. Okay. So I don't know if you heard this, but tonight or today, probably tonight in Paris, Simone Biles won yet another Olympic gold medal. And it is just a glorious thing to see. It was a team gold. This is the picture. She said in an interview, I don't keep count of medals. I don't keep stats. I just go out there, do what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing what I love and enjoying it. That's really all that matters to me. And I have to say, nobody deserves to enjoy it more. Nobody deserves to do what she loves more. Simone Biles had nothing to prove, but she showed us yet again what it means to be a champion. She showed us that sometimes being a champion means, for your sake and for the sake of your teammates, sitting it out. And sometimes it means stepping it up and winning a gold medal. So thank you, Simone Biles, for doing what you do so exquisitely. That's it for tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. I'll be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern. But don't forget, we've got Morning Jen at 8 a.m. Eastern. And I think tomorrow's Tuesday. Right? I'm losing track of the days. We have got Legal Nerds at 2 o'clock with Jen and Daniel. And at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, we have Ali Samarco's America Show. Check that out. And of course, Morning Jen on Thursday and the Nerds Thursday at 12. We'll keep you posted every time there's a new show. We'll tell you what shows are upcoming. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're really trying to grow, and we cannot do that without you. And we really appreciate all of you so much. I'm hoping to get to a point on these shows where I can speak to some of your comments, but I'm running solo, so it's a little tricky at the moment. But thank you again. And if you could subscribe, that'd be great. Doesn't cost anything. It just means you'll be alerted whenever any new episodes drop. Like the show, share it with anybody you think might find Mary Trump Media and all of our content interesting or valuable. And that does it for us. Thank you again. And Jen will see you first thing in the morning. I will see you tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock Eastern. In the meantime, please stay safe,